Hello, everybody, my wickedly divine subscribers, listeners, viewers. I don't know, it's kind of interesting when I do videos like in this format, like you could be watching, but really, you're mostly just listening, even if you're watching. Anyways, so I came on here to do a divine masculine update because there are just so many synchronicities going on with particular things that match the divine masculine collective, especially I'm going to say graduate class of 2021 and graduate class of 2022, which they kind of have this Venn diagram mix, so it's like I don't know. I'm not going to take it so seriously that I have to know which is which. I am just uh making all the good juicy information that I know of while I drop my phone here and there. Anyways, so the big synchronicity coming in is the final countdown, which has some interesting context to it for my own personal story. Though, in terms of the collective, what I'm getting is that song. And it's funny, I went and looked up what the artist was that does that song, The Final Countdown. And then every time I try to go to do the video, it disappears. So I'll leave that to you. It's a classic rock song, it's fucking fabulous. Go ahead and listen to it. And what I would recommend is yes, listen to the lyrics. There's usually messages in the lyrics, but what I would recommend is put on some damn headphones, put on your warm gloves, put on your hat, whatever the fuck you got to do, and go for a walk and listen to that song and look at what you see around you. What birds do you see? What squirrels? What cars? What numbers? What weird little pieces of garbage on the ground? You know what I mean? And then just I don't know, let it be kind of a music therapy moment and listening to that final countdown. Like, what thoughts come into your mind when you listen to that song? And then in other times, take a moment to sit and think about just those three words, that phrase, the final countdown. Like, you already if you're listening to this, it's very likely you're a divine feminine or DX. And if you're a divine masculine, you're probably like checking to see like, yeah, is this what's going on in my life? But the first two are more common. So you're gonna know what this means for you and your particular twin flame dynamic. You just have to be willing to give yourself permission to trust your motherfucking self. Okay? Now, what I'm sensing collectively is that this is largely the DMs who have been in like Agatha Christie style karmic dynamics, and I don't just mean people. Like, they've been making themselves small for society, for work, for family, for lovers, partners, people with higher commitments, shit like that. Like, really dumbing themselves down and placating and doing shit like that, and they're just fed up with it, right? And every time they think that they've got some sort of balance, they're keeping the peace, like something or someone comes in and does something. And then on top of that, for a lot of you, these particular DMs, even when they know that they're doing everything that they need to keep their karmic people and situations in balance and feeling good, then a lot of those karmic people in particular will go and try to like pick fights with you or get someone else to do it or do things like that. Or there'll be something that comes up that reminds them of your DM, was it you, like divine feminine, and it's like, oh, I'm not as good as that. Or what if I let DM go for a minute to handle his own business like a grown ass man? Oh no, you might leave me, right? So then they start to try to like preemptively prevent any sort of like interactions between the two of you, and they actually have been like, it's been backfiring so fucking bad, especially since the Pisces full moon, and then again with the Taurus full moon, especially because there was an eclipse in the Taurus full moon. So like anybody who's been in bully energy, like it's been massively unstable. And like, so like, even if you like being in big energy, not a problem, but being in bully energy, being in insecure energy, especially all the fucking Scorpio season energy, like, man, it's like dominoes mixed with Jenga. You know what I mean? Like, if you had a Jenga tower and you're trying to play it while racing the dominoes around the room before they come and like knock it over and stuff like that. And it's definitely, oh, what is it? I had a friend that had a tarot deck that had a card in it that I just mentioned to someone else. It's the Five of Pentacles in a typical deck, but it's called the Matchstick Girl in another deck, and it's the story of I believe it's an old Scandinavian story or an old Russian story of like a girl who, like, she could have gone inside this church and she could have gotten warm and she could have done that, but instead she sat outside this window in the snow, and she had like a box of, or it was like a, not a box, it was like a bundle of matches, and the girl had been through a really, really hard life, and like it's cold out there, it's, and she's like in a space of giving up, and rather than like getting up and walking around to keep warm or to go inside the church and do it, instead she sits there and decides to just light the entire thing of matches and just, stay as warm as she could until it went out, and she died there. And like that's a lot of like, it's funny. First of all, I love the fact that, most like if you look at the Grimm's fairy tales, most fairy tales actually ended like that. They were not pretty. Like they were not, and they weren't supposed to be. Like, think about that. What does that say, right? Like, if you're in a situation where like you're lighting one match after the other, attempting to hold on to a situation when you could easily uplift yourself or uplift others and be in a space to where you're comfortable and you're like only giving from your overflow. Like, if you're in a place of insecurity, you're unstable. And so you keep like burning away at your resources, trying to level up. A lot of people do this in relationships. Like, they'll get into it and immediately start talking about commitment that really you shouldn't even be thinking about until you hit like the 2 year mark, maybe the 5 year mark, especially. Come on, this is 2021. Like, we most definitely do not need to be in a space where like we're looking for the one every fucking time we're, in relationship. And even when we find them, or even if we feel like we have found them, there's no reason to be in a rush. People change over time, and you like, I mean, if you really love somebody, then there's no reason to do it. But a lot of people do that. Like, they'll get into it, like, for them, a relationship is not about getting to be able to grow with somebody else, like to be your own person with another person, like true healthy interdependence. No, it's usually very codependent, and it's usually like, I don't feel like I could pay my bills on my own, or I don't feel like I could be comfortable unless somebody was in my bed every night, or or they're giving me affection, or I don't feel like people get into relationships based on those insecurities and then wonder why they keep having, like, they keep trying to level it up. Oh, well, give me a commitment. Are we together now? Okay, we're together now. What about marriage? Okay, when are we going to get married? And what are we going to do about it here and there? And let's sign a lease for a house, and let's get a car, and like doing all that stuff. And like, then they get, it's like, it's funny because I spent like 22 months ago, like when my DM went off on his adventure to go find himself a deal with his karmic stuff, I started looking into like, what is emotional stability, and how do you heal attachment traumas, and how do you heal codependence and shit like that. And what I found is that most like, I'm gonna say 9 out of 10 relationships in this day and age will burn themselves out within 2 to 3 years. Like, usually faster, but they will burn themselves out because everybody's in this like rush to get to this like destination that they haven't even defined. Like, they don't even sit and look at, like, how do I know when I've achieved measurable results that I can feel like I'm comfortable in life and I can do more? No, they're just like rushing towards, like, I gotta get money, and I gotta get somebody who won't leave me, and I gotta get married, and I gotta do this, and I have to present myself to these people this way and those people that way, and like, and I have to work out an appropriate job or make enough money, or it has to be a high school diploma, not a GED. Like, like, we have all these ridiculous, arbitrary, absurd like levels of like, what, it's not even, will this make me happy? It's like, will other people accept me? Or will my mother or father think I did good? Or am I meeting the objectives that I feel like society thinks I could meet? Like, hardly anyone actually gets with somebody else and is like, do I feel like I would be comfortable with like enjoying my life while walking a path with this person as they are walking their path and doing their own thing? And do I feel like I would be okay whether we come together or we have moments apart? Do I feel like by the time that we're 80, we'd have like a bajillion delightful stories of shadow and light and rainbows and all sorts of things like that? Like, nobody really sits and looks like, will I be content? Will I have inner peace with this person? Will I have fun with this person? No, it's all, oh, that's not what life's about. I feel like that's my DM's grumpy side. Oh, life's not fair. We can't all be a good example. Which is really, it's funny. Those are his words that his karmic Tina had him say on that. Like, oh well, we can't all have good boundaries because life's not fair, and I can't control people, and you can't control people. And it's like, I mean, I remember when he sent me shit like that, and I'm like, oh, you're fucking adorable. Like, like as if having healthy boundaries has anything to do with controlling anyone else. It doesn't. It's literally about self-control. Like, look up the meaning of boundaries. Like, rules are for other people, and you don't really need those because you really shouldn't be controlling other people. In fact, if you feel the need that you have to control other people, that you have to determine how they feel about you, that you have to keep them away from other people that might steal them away, or what is it? What does the karmic say? My little gremlins might enchant you or do like fucking, I don't know. They're so fucking absurd. They're so delightful. It's like, man, you guys make up some crazy ass stories. It's fucking beautiful. I want to see what's next. You know what I mean? And then like, but a lot of people do that. You know what I mean? Like, you get into relationship or jobs or different situations, and then the first thing you immediately look for is, how could this fall apart? How could I get screwed? What do I have to protect? You know, and rather than, what could I learn in this? And like, what can I be grateful for in this? And, you know, is there a way that I can find to observe the energies in this situation? Like you don't have to go into any dynamic, whether work or family or relationship or anything, from a space of like, what can I get out of it? What might it take from me? Or, you know, any of that shit. Like, you don't have to. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad to do it. I'm just saying that, like, at this point in time, after doing that myself, and then getting to a place of wholesomeness after healing all that shit, it's funny as fuck to me. like people are adorable. It's like, yeah, I can sit there and watch two people completely blame each other and everybody else, and like just be in a place of like victim consciousness, hero, villain, victim. Oh, I'm trying to be the hero and nobody will let me, and I know that I'm placating and not even really being myself, so they can't even really appreciate me because I'm not being myself, but they should appreciate the bullshit that I'm putting on for them so that they'll be happy because this person's being a villain in my life and that person's trying to victimize me. And then you hear them go into the victim-y place, like, oh, everybody's out to get me, I can't get any breaks, and that person told the truth and that person lied, and this person doesn't have any faith in me, la, 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 la. And then you turn into the villain. Well, you made me do it. You made me say this. You have to stop. You can't be trusted. Look at what you've done already. Look at all the old shit you did. Don't forget, if you ever let anybody love you, you might get hurt again by somebody else. And, oh, you know what? I had to take that from you. I had to do that thing. I had to hurt you because you were going to hurt me, or you hurt me first. And like all this fucking bullshit. Like, really, like, you know, it's funny. My oldest son, I don't talk to him like that, but we do have talks sometimes. And I will, like, you know, when the moment is appropriate, I'll say, you know, how would you feel if you were getting the attention you felt like you deserved in that moment? And he'll be like, wow, like, I didn't think about it that way. And I'll be like, well, does it sting a little? And he goes to kind of at first, but then no. Like, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. Like, it only stings for a second, and then it feels way fucking better because you're like, oh, that's right. I really was only just upset because I wanted a certain kind of attention in that moment. And, like, it's fair to want that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely... it creates a different container for the space to be held in when you recognize your own BS. You know what I mean? And this is that kind of energy of the final countdown stuff. Like, the DMs are in that space of like recognizing that as long as they are sitting in a position, like, you know, it's like, oh, what is it? It's like being in a tank with sharks and piranhas, and like somehow you're barely surviving. They're not trying to come at you, but it's like if you move, they'll try to start coming at you. And then there's leeches in there that are already after you, so it's like if you sit still, you're still going to be drained of all the energy by the leeches, but if you move, you gotta move fucking fast because sharks and piranhas will be like, ooh, dinner for dinner, breakfast, lunch, dunch, munch, brunch, all the things, you know. And so they're kind of treading water at this point in time with so many leeches all over them, and it's like, well, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna let them continue to drain you? Are you gonna, because eventually them leeches are gonna be so fat and full of all your fucking energy and money and all this shit, they're gonna start like falling off of your body, and guess what? They're full of your blood, and guess what attracts sharks and piranhas? Yep, you fucking got it. Blood, flesh, all that fucking shit. So you, either way, you're fucked if you don't get out of that tank. And that's kind of the image that Spirit keeps bringing to me about some of these DMs, is like, you know, yeah, you could one by one try to go through with each of these sharks and piranhas and leeches and try to work out each thing. But here's the deal: right when you get one leech off and you have that conversation with them about respecting your boundaries, you got 6 more on your back, right? And then you got to go back and try to deal with each one of them one by one. And as you deal with each one, the other ones come back on. And it's like, it's crazy making. It really is. It's like Jekyll and Hyde crazy making. But Spirit has basically put them in this position not to do something to them, to create situations for them. Because sometimes, especially a lot of these DMs are used to either being quote unquote rescued by, and including by many of us divine feminines in the past, like in the space of like, you need to do it this way because last time you got yourself in trouble. Even that's a form of rescuing and of controlling, right? So they're used to either having somebody come in and like clean up the mess so they don't have to do it, or to like you know, basically pull them out of it or hold them down or create all sorts of chaos. Like, I mean, I've seen some feminines, whether divine or not, that are like, they'll literally like manifest an emergency just because they hope that their DMs will stop and like take care of them and not go to their divine feminines, or not step into their own divinity. Because believe it or not, people, like, most divine masculines are not all about relationship shit, and most divine feminines aren't either. When we get into our healthy self-loving space, you don't need to be. Like, yes, the 3D shit is fucking amazing when it comes together, but it's an even more amazing dynamic than a typical relationship, because you don't need the 3D. And so there isn't a need to be. So these DMs already know. These ones that are on this path, they already know that they've got the unconditional love of their divine feminines. Most of their divine feminines, probably you watching and listening, have already been working on your shit. You're already stepping into your light and stepping into your power, and you're not stepping on anybody else to do it, including them. You're not in a space in your head where you're like, they're immature, or they're fucking up, or they're too slow. Like, no. Like, if you're in that space, go back and start at square one. I have a series called Path of the Empress. It's like not complete, but it fucking documents how I fucking got here. So, you know, if you want to go through and get to a place where you feel emotionally stable no matter what your twin flame is doing, I recommend you fucking start there. Toot my own horn on it. I've had a lot of people share it, other readers who have got, you know, far more push and pull than me, who say I'm like the guru of unconditional love, which I don't know if I like the guru title, but I will accept that I know a fucking lot about it. And especially because it starts with self-love, which is really what the twin flame journey is about. Self-love. It's not about the union. It's like, you know, it's not even necessarily about the missions. It's just that most people that end up either choosing the journey in this lifetime, or who chose it in former lifetimes and are continuing it, like, they like the adventurousness, they like the contrast, they like the flaws. Like, that's what unconditional love is about. It's not about putting up with anything. It's not about, oh yeah, well, this person has all these toxic fucking behaviors, but I love them anyways. No, it's getting to a place to where you can love somebody without the physical attachment when they're in a space of like not being healthy, and recognize that your biggest motherfucking power is holding space that they are already growing on their own, that you don't need to measure it, you don't need to watch it, you don't need to mark it on a calendar, you don't need to judge it. Like, no, you just have faith that they do it. And how many people give us that? How many people give you that? No, not a lot. So that's where the fucking power is, especially in feminine energy, divine feminine energy, you know? And So this is that space to where like these DMs are comfortable with their dynamics with their DFs, even if there's no contact, even if in 3D they're still they're still putting on the masks and shit like that. Like they're totally like even if their physical bags are not packed, in their hearts all that fucking emotional luggage is already neatly folded and packed and ready to go, and they're just waiting for the moment. Now there's been some dates that have been thrown out at me. I'm gonna say April 3rd, April 4th. June, weirdly enough, June 16th, so Juneteenth. I think it's Juneteenth, isn't it? Or is it June 19th? Maybe both of those days are important. June 27th, and then July 17th, and I want to say August 20th. Um, the main ones though, or April and June, like those have been coming up continually. Now, there's likely to be a fair amount of other shit that's going to be happening in the middle, but I'm telling you, Divine Feminine and DXs that are listening to this, don't worry about it. I know that that sounds weird, but the way that you get to that is by focusing on what you want. Like, you don't need union right now. Do you got all your shit together? You got all your ducks in a row? Can you afford to pay for yourself no matter where you are? Are you comfortable? You got a garden that you like? You got clothes that you like? You feel stable and secure whether you have a relationship or not? Are you still back on like page 20 where you're trying to figure out whether you should be with a soulmate and is this even your twin flame or are they narcissists? Blah, 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 blah. Like if you're there, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with being there, but this is not for you. Like, you may get messages out of this that are for future moments that are for you, but if you are in a place where within yourself you do not feel inner peace and even like excited anticipation about the final countdown energy that's coming up, then you're not there yet. That's okay. Like, your pace is your pace. You don't got to be at my pace. You don't got to be at other people's paces. That's why Spirit's disseminating this information in sort of this like graduate class style kind of thing, okay? So, and don't be afraid to reach out. Like those of us that start to get up into the upper levels of the mountain, we will reach a hand back down so long as you are actually willing to own your BS, look at your shadows, and get out of that insecurity energy. If you're not ready for that, then don't reach your hand up. You're not there yet. It's fine. Like, love yourself through it, right? That's how we got to where we are. Now, this final countdown energy is one of those, like, it's going to occur when you're like, it's going to be one of those like pleasantly surprised sort of things. Hello, Daymore, you're excited? Good, I'm glad. Yay, I'm excited too. So it's going to be one of those, I've been noticing it, and I've been looking at the signs and the syncs and the patterns and the spiral cycles for various different spaces of collectives, and what I'm looking at, especially with astrology in there, and then like a fair amount of like ancient prophecy type things, what we're looking at is, for those of you DFs and DXs who are like feeling the goodness of this energy, like this is when you step into yourself. This is when you get into a little bit of like healthy selfishness energy, okay? This is when you speak the things that you want to say to family, to friends, to everybody. When you stand up for yourself, this is the energy where you decide, what are you doing that's going to bring light into the world? Are you going to work with kids? Are you going to work with animals? Are you going to do something completely different? Are you going to be an entertainer or a comedian or an artist? What are you going to do? Like, what's your thing? And you don't even have to pick a permanent thing. Just what are you going to do right now? You know what I mean? Like, what's something that could bring you delight and gratitude and joy and stability and warmth no matter what the heck you're going through? Because many of you, like myself, are going to be put through various different trials in the 3D. You might end up homeless for a minute. You might end up having to change jobs. You might move or relocate. You might release like old communities and families. You might go in and out and all sorts of things. And so all you really need to do is have a thing for you that is like, this brings me joy no matter what. And it really, you're best off if it's something that you can do no matter where you are. So like, you know, if it requires a lot of 3D attachments for you to do it, it's done. Like for me, it's stories, right? And this is something I already was doing. This is something I've been doing since I was little, but it's like the stories, the experiences, the plot twists, the characters, the observations, the contrast, the light, the shadow. And you know what? I mean, I was gonna say I could experience stories with just the clothes on my back, but the truth is I could have stories completely buck ass naked too. So you know, you're both artists. Yeah. See, right? Yeah. You're right. A little bit of nomad. So like, but here's the thing. So that's perfect. I fucking love you. I love everything about you. I'm glad that you said that nomad energy, because that's been a word that's come up too. Like, there's a lot of people that are in an energy still, especially, I'm gonna say not out of the Twin Flame Collective, but definitely not like in the level of this energy right now, that are in a space of like I can't do it alone, which is something that's been conditioned into generation after generation, especially since the Great Depression. And guess what? One of my favorite things about the astrological alignments we have going on right now is that they match both the time that we were going through the Great Depression and we had Spanish influenza, and then way back before that during the American Revolution. Okay, so we have that's very similar energy, and those are the times when we got conditioned into this really unhealthy codependent collective energy, and then on the other side toxic independence. And it was like we did, I swear it was like we did this weird Freaky Friday thing to where like feminines became like the toxic masculines, and masculines got into toxic femininity, and like it's like what? And then everybody kind of was stripped of their core identities over time, and we could see that, reshaping and molding and like shifting into various new things. So it's not like sure, it wasn't a beautiful experience for a lot of people, but what's about to come up is going to be fucking amazing. And so here's the deal though, for those divine feminines and DXs who are like feeling aligned to this sort of energy, you should feel like you're comfortable in sort of some nomad energy. Like whether you like throw a garbage bag over your back on a stick like the Fool card and you like wander off into the woods for like the next 3 or 4 months, or whether you're like with friends or you're in your own space or whatever, like you're not hiding. You're not like, I can't go out because I might have a bad experience, or I can't talk to people because they might know about, I don't know, Twin Flame Journey, or this or that, or like, I don't want to know people because it goes, like, if it's insecurity, that's not the energy that I'm channeling right now. It's okay if you're there, but like I said, go back and work on that stuff. There's other stuff for that. This is for those that are in a space where they're like, you know what an adventure I could have as a nomad. Like, I'm going to have this time where I know that there's going to be like either less communication or no contact with my DM, and I'm actually excited about that, because I know for one thing that when I'm enjoying myself and I'm loving them, whatever I'm doing, and I'm also not in a space of like needing that 3D connection, that guess what? My DM gets to go through the shit that I learned to do when they were pulling away from me, when they were doing the Knight of Wands, when they were breadcrumbing and I was waiting and on my own and shit like that, because I found my power in there. And you know what else I found? I found even more deepening love for my DM. And so they're going to learn that shit while we are out doing our own thing, whether it's like genuine nomad, like on our own, or whether it's nomad as in we're just not worried about relationship and shit like that, because we are the ones holding the space. Okay, feminine energy, think about it. We have the womb, things gestate in our wombs. Now we have 3D things that do that. It's usually children, sometimes it's a cyst or something like that, but usually it's babies, but the thing is, what most people don't realize is that we can also channel that energy as an energetic thing. Like when you hear a lot of readings that talk about, oh, there's a pregnancy, this and that. First of all, way too many people look at the Empress card and the Nine of Pentacles and automatically go, oh, pregnancy. Like, the problem isn't even that they say pregnancy. The problem is that people take that in a very literal fashion. You'll hear some readers talk about, well, it could be that you're pregnant with an idea. But really, that's where we want to dive into, okay? Like, whether, 3D babies come into the play or not, it's actually your ability to use that feminine womb energy. Like, it is literally a place where you hold space. I'm not even fucking kidding, right? Like, so what can you hold in that space energetically that could like grow over this time? Like, what could you do that like would be for you, completely for you, being selfish, not worrying about taking up space, not worrying about what anybody else thinks, that, I don't know, might also prove that you're like a giantess and a total goddess and a queen in comparison to anyone else who's coming at you with insecurities. Like, it doesn't mean that you're better than anyone, but when you go into that space and you're holding space for yourself in your womb space, your place to hold space, that's a beautiful thing. You're going to naturally rise above so many people because they are in a collective energy of codependence and toxic independence and insecurity, which makes them unstable. And so while you're in that stable energy and you're, putting to use your space holding spaces and you're enjoying yourself and you're being delightful, guess what? You make it so that others can lift themselves up, and that includes your DM. But your DM should not be your main focus in this final countdown energy. No, your main focus should be you feeling good about you. You feeling like you're stable on your own and you're good on your own, and not from a space of like, I have to be, or I can't be with anybody else because it's my DM. Like, none of that shit. If you're in a space of like feeling insecure about things, it's not there. Okay. But if you're in a space of you're like, you know what, I'm really enjoying the story of me on my own right at the moment. It doesn't, I get to decide how long it lasts or how long it feels good for or doesn't feel good for, because I have ability to manifest the emotions that I want, even if on occasion someone triggers one that I prefer not to be in. I can still go, you know what are 3 things that I'm grateful for? And I can switch myself right back over to them joy vibes, you know? Like, when you're in that space, you know how fucking attractive you are. Like, not just in a physical sense, not just in not even like a 4D sense of like that energy is attractive. I mean, like in a literal, like all the dimensional sense. You know how many things will just flow into your life when you are in like law of attraction kind of attraction energy. Like, so during this final countdown energy, whether it's like a day or a week or another 6 months or another 12 months or fuck another 12 years, regardless, when you are in that energy, like, it won't matter. Time will not matter. If you and your DM aren't really quite ready for your own graduating class until another 10 years from now, you're gonna have a fucking blast over the next 10 years if you're in that energy. You know what I mean? And that just means that when that shit comes together, you're gonna be solid. And not because you're having to control yourself, not because you're having to be something, not be, that you're not because you're trying to be small, not because you had to wait for them to do this, because you were genuinely having fun, and by the time that they rendezvous with you, they've already done the same things too. And you know why? Because first and foremost, you held a space in your heart, in your head, and in your womb space for them that said, I know and completely believe that they are in alignment with me at all times, even when I cannot see the confirmation of it in 3D, because time is not linear. And sometimes I line up in timelines with older versions of them, just like sometimes I line up with older versions of me. And so I don't need to measure what it looks like right in the now. And here's the thing, whether you want to go through science, psychology, metaphysics, any of the shit, whatever you want to go through, the brain will find proof for what you genuinely believe is true. Though you can only be there if you have done your shadow work. You know who the fuck you are. You have your core values in line. They're not uber controlling. They're not based on what your mommy or daddy or anybody else thought about it. And you are comfortable moving as you. When you are in that space, you will not be bothered by time or distance or contact or no contact. And you will be the one who, what is it, the favorite Virgo gremlins say, who controls the narrative. Okay? And that's because you only ever need to control the narrative in your own head and your own heart. And then the great thing is, like, so many people look at it like, oh my gosh, like, let's say if I hold a belief that my DM's going to be with me, then that means I'll be responsible for breaking up their relationship or doing this or that, or maybe it's not real and shit like that. What you got to realize is that you may be in a timeline right now where your DM actually is happy being with someone else. For one thing, if you feel bad about that, that shows your shadow work. That shows where you need to work on your own securities, because you're not ready to be in a twin flame union if you feel insecure with your DM being with someone else. You need to learn compersion and find yourself feeling happy that they're experiencing love in whatever way they need to in each moment, and that you're comfortable with that in or out of relationship, because most twin flame relationships are not going to meet conventional dynamics. They're just not. If that's what you want, then stop on the twin flame journey shit. Go back and, sit in your comfy couch and find a soulmate that's just going to be quiet with you. Like, I mean, it's nothing wrong with that. It's just not the twin flame journey, okay? So when you get into a space to where you're comfortable flowing as who you are, you don't have to control what things look like. You don't have to be in a space of like, I need everyone to speak the story the way that I feel it, or I need everybody to like me, or I need nobody to be trying to like pull me back. You're like, my favorite thing lately is like, no, like, you know what? I used to hate it when people tried to drag me down, 3:33 on the clock. But actually it's like, no, you know how much more interesting you make my story? You know what I mean? You want to threaten me? You want to sue me? You want to do this shit and that shit? You know what? It's going to make my story more interesting. Whether I go to jail, whether I end up doing some time in a relaxing mental retreat, whether I have to pay a whole bunch of fucking money to get myself out of debt more. Like, do you know how much more exciting that makes my story? I'm a fucking writer and I'm a collector of stories. I have no problem with that. Go ahead and pile it on. I'm also a Capricorn. Don't think that that's anything fucking new for me. You know, like, go for it because those are what makes interesting stories. And I can guarantee you that there is not a damn person who's on YouTube or Facebook or rich or doing any of that stuff that has a boring fucking story. Boring stories do not equate to the level of 3D wealth and social appreciation and things like that that people think that they do. And there's nothing wrong with a boring story. Heck, sometimes I'm like, man, wouldn't it be nice if this was just like a boring happily ever after thing? But then I'm like, you know what? No, like that's not me. The only reason I would even want that is because that's what everyone else says you're supposed to want. And you know what? I am allowed to want what the fuck I want. You are allowed to want what you want. You don't have to meet conventional anything, okay? Not at all. So get your mind out of that stuff. I know, right? So get your mind out of there and think about what you want. If you're being selfish, not in like not being unkind, but if you were being selfish and you're like, say for example, your DM's in with karmics, okay? If you're being selfish, you're taking the advice that most people say when people are not doing exactly what you want. Like they're like, well, do what's best for you. So actually take that fucking advice. If what's best for you and you feel like it is to have like a healthy friendship with your DM, because you can't force them in a relationship. You can't even force them into friendship and shit like that. But you could be a friend and you could be somebody that's like, you know what, I'm gonna speak the truth because I know that they need the encouragement or they're stuck in a shitty situation and not have any sort of agenda about needing a fucking relationship. But you're gonna have all sorts of fucking people if that DM is in relationships who are really, it's fucked up, you're fucking up relationship. Well, here's the deal. They're thinking about what's best for them, not what's best for you. And they're giving you, they're probably the same fucking people that are like, oh, don't think about them, do what's best for you. But honey, if you feel like it's best for you to have that connection, you could find kind, benevolent ways to do that. You could be selfish and kind and benevolent. Why not play with that? This is the fucking human experience. If you're worried that other people aren't going to like that, then you're not in a space for this video. You're not in a space to level up yet. Don't beat yourself up on it. Just acknowledge it, own your own BS, because you can't get here until you've gone through that. As Abraham Hicks says, you can't get there from there, you know? So I'm going to end this here because I got some kiddos that are like begging me to come up and play a board game, and I just love everything about that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I love you all. Thank you for listening. Work on you. Focus on you. That's how you call in your twin flame. You focus on you. You love yourself. You do all that fucking shit that you criticize them for not doing. You do it. That's what you do at this time while the final countdown begins.